Welcome to Fueling Your Legacy, hosted by Samuel Knickerbocker. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a new, stronger foundation essential in creating your legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. Welcome back to Fuel Your Legacy. And as we discussed this week, I talked about our wonderful guest here, Glen Hatch. And he's actually my wife's grandfather. And I first met him it's been about 3 years now, about 3 years ago. And before I met him, obviously I met my wife, and she was telling me all these stories about how he grew up and said, "Oh, you're just like my grandpa, Sam, just like my grandpa. The stories you tell, the craziness of your childhood, and then your aspirations." He's already lived a full life of building businesses and things. So we're going to talk about that, and then his family and what he's leaving as his legacy. Super excited for this. Stay tuned, and then think about what if you could interview your grandparents or your great grandparents, and what type of questions would you be asking them? And maybe if you'd like, you can respond on either social media, Instagram, Sam Knickerbocker, or Facebook, Samuel Knickerbocker, or you can text Sam to this number, 385-263-7699. I'll say that again. It's 385-263-7699. And if you text Sam to that, then you'll be able to give me suggestions of questions that I might be able to ask him if we have him on again. So with that being said, welcome, Grandpa.
Thanks,
or Granddaddy. And just tell us a little bit about your life growing up. What were the conditions? Where did you live? What was that like?
Well, I was in a family of, I was the last of eight kids. I was the baby. But my dad was 50 when I was born. And so I have brothers and sisters that are, the oldest one is 23 years older than me, and the other one is 20 years older, 18 years old, 16 years old, that sort of thing. And so when I was old enough to know anything, most of my siblings were married and out of the home. There was only about 3 of us left in the home. So, and my dad was, he was the oldest of 14 children. And his father got killed. His dad went into a bar, got in a fight, and the guy who was fighting, that guy's friend came up behind him and hit him over the head with his gun. Back then, they were still packing guns on their hips. Hit him on the head, my grandpa, so I never did get to know him, and he died about a week later of a blood clot. So that left my dad. Here my dad was, the oldest of 14 kids, left with his mother. And so he had to drop out of school, so he got very little education. Had to drop out of school and go to work in the coal mines, gilsonite mines, with all these men, a pretty rough kind of a group. And so it turned out, my dad, my growing up years, it was very difficult for him to even give you one sentence without a couple of swear words in. He was very, very rough that way. And he was baptized when he into the LDS church when he was 8. But as he got a little older and got jobs, he was working. He wasn't active, and people called him Smoking Deacon because he was a deacon and he was smoking and stuff like that. And those are just things I learned about him. But he was a self-made man, and it turns out, if you want me to, I'll tell the story as quick as I can. But he's my hero. And let me tell you why. He wasn't active in church. He smoked and drank and And my little mother didn't, which was good. I was the only one in the family that ever went to church. I mean, not ever, but went to church. And I was the only one that graduated from college, the only one that got a degree, the only one that was married in the temple. So that was my background. That was where I came from. And I don't know, but one of the things that really changed me when I was young, and I don't know why, when I was in the fourth grade, back then, baseball, grade school, all these schools, these up to the sixth grade, were very competitive. They had a city league baseball team that they played in. Then every year they would crown a city, a Provo City champion. Well, I pitched for the fourth grade team. And the coach of the sixth grade team used to come out and watch us a lot. And he came to me one day and he says, I want you to pitch for the sixth grade team. Well, I was flattered. So he moved me up to the sixth grade team. We went on, won the city championship. And, but I don't know why. None of my family played ball. I didn't even know what a ball was until I got into grade school. So I don't know why I had this interest, but that competitive spirit just built in me the competitiveness that you need in business. You want to win, but you want to win fair and right, but I wanted to win. So also in the fourth grade that year, I won the Provo City Marble Championship. Well, most people don't even know what marbles are, but back then that was one of the biggest things that the young kids did. I won the City Marble Championship. In the fifth grade, I won the City Marble Championship. Sixth grade, I won the City Marble Championship. And that year, they took me, coaches from the school drove me to Smithfield, Utah. They had a big state marble championship. And I won a state marble championship. And the woman that awarded us the trophies had just become Miss America, Colleen Hutchins. And she was the sister of the great Mel Hutchins, probably the greatest basketball player to ever come from BYU. He was All-American, so on and so forth. But anyway, that kind of started me, in being very competitive. Of course, I went on. I played sports all through junior high, high school, and college. I received two scholarships in college to play ball. So anyway, but back to my father, why he's my hero. About when I was, I don't know, maybe 13, 14 years old, I came home from school one day. I walked in and he was sitting on the couch with the bishop. They were talking. Well, I didn't pay too much attention. A few week or so later, I came in there, they were again. And I wanted to hear what they were saying, so I kind of ducked around the corner of one of the walls and I listened. And boy, they were talking. Bishop was really, you'd think it should have been a home teacher, but it wasn't. It was the bishop. My dad's name was Josephus. He went by Joe. He said, Joe, really, you're a great man. You could be such a great member of the church. You need to get married and sealed in the temple. Get all your kids sealed to you that you can. And I recommend it. Well, anyway, that went on for a number of months. And actually a lot longer than that. After I was married, and my wife and I was married right out of high school. We were just 18. And we were home one day, the phone rang, and he says, my dad says, Glenn, how would you like to go to church with me? The bishop asked me to speak and stake priest with me. Well, stake, that's big. It's a lot of guys. And I said, oh, I'd love that, Dad. You can imagine how I felt. I really felt great about it. But I was really trembling. I was petrified because I thought, what in the world can Dad say? He swears every other sentence, you know. Well, anyway, we got in there and came time for him to speak, and I was embarrassed, so I put my head down and was looking down at the floor, and he started speaking. After a minute and a half or 2 minutes, I couldn't believe what I was hearing, so I looked up to see if it was my dad. I thought maybe it was one of the other guys on the stand that got up first. No, it was my dad, and he gave a fantastic speech. Not one swear word in the whole speech. And to close his testimony, his testimony was different than I'd ever heard. He pointed his finger at all the brethren, and he says, brethren, that's the way he talked. He didn't talk this way the whole time, but for his tenure, he says, brethren, let me tell you something. If I didn't know this church was true, I wouldn't be here. That's how he ended his talk. Well, we went out, the day ended, we went out, got the car, came home, and on the way home, he said, Glenn, what did I say? I said, Dad, you know what you said. He says, no, I don't know. What? Please tell me something. What did I say? And I started telling him a few things. He said, I said that? I said, you did. He said, and I said that? I said, you did. Oh, and of course, I forgot to tell you, after his meetings with the bishop, he stopped drinking and smoking cold turkey. Just one day came into the family, my mother and I said, never touched a drink again or a cigarette. He didn't, never did the rest of his life. He just quit. So anyway, it was very obvious to me that he was under the direction of the Holy Ghost. I know a lot of people don't believe in these things, but I do, and I believe the Holy Ghost told him what to say. It was so obvious. You'd have to know my dad to know that. But anyway, a few months later, I turned 19 and was ordained to the Melchizedek priesthood. And a couple months after that, I get another phone call from my dad. And he says, Glenn, how would you like to go to Salt Lake with your mother and I? We're going to be married and sealed in the temple. I said, oh, Dad, I'd love that. He says, okay. And he says, by the way, there's only one of our other children that can be sealed to us at this time. That's Laurel. That was a sister that died when she was 21. I was about 3 when she died. But anyway, he said, do you think Kay would be willing to go with us and stand in as proxy for Laurel? I said, oh, I'm sure she would. So Kay did. So we all went up there, the 4 of us, had a most glorious experience at the temple. Kay stood in, and so on. So my dad and mom were married and sealed in the temple. And I just can't tell you how thrilling that was to me. And but this is the kind of man he was. And then one day I went to my mother. I said, Mom, everywhere I go with Dad, different. Provo was really small back then. Basically, you knew everybody in town, and I knew everybody. Not only did I know everybody in Provo High School when I was there, I knew everybody in BY High School. There was only 2 high schools. They were really small. BY High was about 400 students. Provo High was 800 students. Now the schools have 2,000, 3,000, whatever. So anyway, I just learned from my father that we'd go places and people would see him and say, "Hi, Joe, how you doing?" And then some would say, "Hey, Smoking Joe, what are you doing?" A lot of people called him Smoking Joe. So I went home one day and I says, "Mother, did you know people are calling Dad Smoking Joe?" She says, "Oh, I know." I says, "What's that all about?" She says, "Well, it started when we first came to Utah from Vernal. We were raised in Vernal, Utah." And she said, "It's because you'll never find a man as honest as your dad. He was so honest, and he got a reputation of honesty. That's just what people called him, was Honest Joe." So all these things kept happening and impacting my life around my father. So anyway, one day I was in a priesthood class not too long ago, and they said, "Why don't all of you write down who your hero is? Then we'll talk about him. Besides Jesus Christ, don't put the Savior down. Put it anybody but the Savior, because the Savior's all of our heroes. But who's your hero?" Well, it was easy for me. I put my dad. And anyway, that's kind of the story of him. But then Kay's father, they lived on the east side. We lived down here on the west side. And he tried to get her, before we were married, to quit going with me. He called me a river rat. "You don't want to go with that river rat down there. He'll never amount to anything. Those people are, they're non-producers, non-workers. Don't go with him." He'd get mad at her when she'd go with him. Anyway, long story short, we got married, and one day he loved to golf. Well, I took up golf. He loved to golf. So he asked me, he says, "Glenn, go, let's get your clubs and go golfing. I'll take you golfing." I says, "Well, I've got to leave right now. I got to go up to BYU and take all these papers." And he says, "Well, what for? What are you going up there for?" I said, "Well, these are the papers that's going to get me into admission to get me in school this year, and my scholarship papers." And he says, "You're going to college?" Just like that. It was just like, "Oh, I can't believe this kid is going to college. You're going to college?" I said, "Yeah." "What's this about a scholarship?" He says, "Yeah, it's 4 years, all paid. Pays all my tuition and books. It pays our rent. I'm on the training table, so I get to eat every day with a team." And anyway, from that time forth, he just, he treated me just totally different. He treated me really good, and we got along. We became the very best friends. And when he died, my mother-in-law, his dear wife, came over to the house. She had his golf clubs in her hand. She says, "Glenn, Dad would want you to have these golf clubs." I says, "Oh no, you can't do that. I'd love his golf clubs, but he's got a son right up here, Kay's brother right up the street. He would want those golf clubs." She says, "No, Dad told me he wants you to have his golf clubs." Anyway, so that's kind of the relationship that we had. And he was also self-made. He came to Utah with no education because he had to drop out of school. He soon became a foreman out at Geneva. As a foreman, took care of the family and bought a house. We got along pretty darn good.
That's awesome. So I'm curious that's kind of, and you did sports all the way up through college.
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Baseball is the main sport. that you did?
Basketball and baseball, but yes, baseball 4 years. But in basketball, I got married young, and then we had a little baby, and early. I was only not quite. I don't think I was even in my sophomore year. And so the coach called me in one day and he said, you're a great basketball player and I really like you. So I don't want you to think anything's wrong, but you're just not going to make it with us. You're married, you got a wife, you got a baby. And so I've talked to the baseball coaches who gave you scholarship also. And they want you. They want you to start playing right now. So they just switched it over to baseball. So baseball became my main sport. I did receive honorable mention All-American. We won. We were the only team in this district to ever win the right to go to the College World Series for, and I pitched the final game and we won it 2-1. I'm bragging, but that's just facts. And had a lot of scouts come in, came around their home, some of them, and wanted me to sign what they call bonus paper. You'd sign to play pro ball, and they called you bonus paper. Well, this one team, they were the highest bidder. They wanted me to sign for $50,000 just to sign, and then you got paid, every month. Well, 50,000 back in 1959
Yeah.
was I've checked that out. They say it was about equivalent to 500,000 now today.
Right.
And so that but the bottom line is we turned it down. It was really hard for me, but we turned it down because as I talked to the scouts and them, found out I'd be playing baseball almost every Sunday. They had a ball game just like they did every Sunday. We'd be traveling, living in motels, hotels. My wife wouldn't be able to go. And even if she could, that would be a good life for her. And she'd have the little baby with her. So I just bit the bullet and told him I couldn't do that. So I didn't sign, and a lot of people thought I was crazy, but that's kind of where the major sports ended.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because it doesn't matter how good something could be.
Yeah.
In one area, if it doesn't create the full effect. So like for me, when I'm talking about legacy with people, I talk about at minimum 4 things. First is faith. What's the legacy of your faith? What are people going to know that you believed and how you lived your life? Second is fitness.
Yeah.
Well, second's either family or fitness, but one of the two. And then family is third, and then finances is last. And sometimes people will switch them around and put their finances first, but then they end up losing the rest of the things that were important to them.
Yeah.
And so understanding that at a young age, that I can see how that's beneficial. $500,000 is probably, that's a lot to say no to, even for
we're a
young 21 who came from poverty.
Yeah,
didn't have anything.
Young married couple. We were like all young married couples. We didn't have any money hardly at all, and it was tough.
Yeah, well, it was a good choice though, I'm sure. So what at what point after high school or after college, or was it during college that you finally decided to start being an entrepreneur, or did you get a job out of college and then become an entrepreneur? What was your career right out of college?
Well, good question. Naturally, we had if I hadn't had the scholarship, that would have really been harder. But we had to have money. And so at night, where when all my other friends were going to the dances, dates, all those things, whatever, ball games, I took a job with a man that had a store in Provo, and he sold cookware. I mean, he had stainless steel cookware. It just came out. Nobody had heard of stainless steel cookware. It was cookware, and he had china, fine china and crystal. And I met him somehow, and he said, well, I'm going to start hiring guys to go out and sell this. And I said, well, I want a job. So he hired me, gave me a kit, I carried it around a little suitcase. And who my clients were? I had hundreds and hundreds of them. They were girls going to school at BYU mainly and around. And I'd go to the doors, knock, and the girls would come, and I'd tell them, would you like to look at this beautiful china and silver and cookware and so on? And a lot of them did. And so I made, this is also a fact, I got called in by the higher ups in the university. I'll never forget walking in one day, and they were all sitting around the table. I walked in, and one of them says, yeah, here's that guy that makes more money than our professors. Well, what he was talking about is I did well. Commission. Mm-hmm. It's all commission. But I was making a lot of sales. And they heard about it. And so what they did, the only thing they could do, they said, look, you cannot go on campus anymore and contact people. You can't sell on campus whatsoever. So I had to go off campus, and just my lead flow, of course, really dwindled. But there were still a lot of girls who lived in apartments and things like that. So I was kind of like my dad. I developed my own presentation, I should call it. And one of the things I learned, one of the best closes I learned was a lot of these girls, and they were there, most of them were wealthy, not wealthy, but their parents had money. They were sending them to school and so forth. But the reason they don't do that anymore, the girls, but back then it was called their trousseau. In other words, if they didn't get all this fine stuff before they were married, then they usually didn't get it. It's called their trousseau items for when they got married. Fine china and cookware and so forth. But anyway, the clothes I used, and I learned it just through trial and error. The girl, because a lot of them loved it. There wasn't any of them that didn't love it, but a lot of them just turned it down and wouldn't buy it. So I learned my clothes was, well, Mary, that's okay. Some girls really like nice things, and some girls don't. That's it. And these girls say, what? I like nice things. They get mad at me because they like nice things. And then they said, I'll take it. So I found out that particular clothes really worked on people who was hesitant to purchase. And that carried through in my life of sales and my businesses and so forth. I came up with closes because all of my businesses were built on sales.
Yeah.
And so anyway.
That's funny. When I did summer sales, probably one of my more effective closes was something similar, but I sold pest control.
Oh.
And generally people will say, well, I don't want to pay for pest control until I see that there's a problem. I don't want to I don't have any ants in my house.
Yeah.
So why would I get pest control? And the truth is almost everybody has ants in their house.
Right.
Even if they have pest control, they have ants in their house because it's pest control, not pest elimination.
Right.
But I say, you know what? There's a lot of people, they wait until their tire blows out on the freeway before they change it. And that's okay. You can do that. But then there's a lot of other people, a lot of your neighbors, they figure it'd make more sense to prevent the problem and make sure that they're getting their tires changed on time, their oil changed and stuff before there's a problem. But if you want to wait, that's fine. We'll still be here. We can still service you when it happens. It's just going to cost a little bit more, just like what if your tire blew out? And there was a lot of people who'd be like, oh, that actually makes sense. And then they'd be ready to purchase at that point because they're wondering more, what's the confidence level? Are you confident that I need this?
Yeah.
Rather than, are you just trying to make some money on me? So it's important to learn closing techniques and skills. I was talking to one of my business partners. He's out doing summer sales right now. And I'm excited because I worked with him a little bit before. He went and did summer sales, and he's gone out and done summer sales, and he's done about as good as I did my first summer. But I'm excited because now he understands the sales process, the whole from beginning of contacting somebody down to getting them to sign the piece of paper and give you their money. That's a process that has to like nurture somebody through it, understand how to guide somebody down where they want to go, because they don't even know where they want to go a lot of times. Yeah. And so helping them identify that. So that was your first experience selling.
Yeah.
That was your first income.
Yeah.
And how many years did you do that for?
Well, all 4 of my years in college, I did it. And then when I graduated, I always thought I wanted to be a coach because I was in athletics, and I majored in physical education, because I wanted to be a coach. Mm-hmm. Well, when I got out of school, there was no openings here in the Valley. I thought there would be, but there wasn't. And Kay and I needed a job because I didn't have I didn't have money coming in from a scholarship anymore or anything. So I checked around. I found an opening in Denver, Colorado. So Kay and I went over there, and we drove over. We didn't fly. We drove over, and I met with the superintendent of this district, and he hired me. Turned out he was the only Mormon in that whole district. He was the superintendent. So that did, because I was a member of the church, that didn't hurt at all. But anyway, he hired me, so I went into coaching. But it was so sad because I made twice, not just more, I made twice as much money as a full-time student as I did after I got my degree and started teaching school. I was teaching and coaching. And boy, did they pay teachers low. We think they're low today, and they are, but it was so low. So after a couple of years, I told my wife, I said, honey, I can't do this. I love the job. I love the kids, but we can't do this. Let's go back to Utah. So I drug her kicking and screaming. She loved the Denver area. But we came back, and that's when I formed my first company. Yeah. And basically it was sales, a little different. That was Willie the Whale.
Yeah, tell us about Willie the Whale. This is one of my favorite stories.
Okay, well, because I was always in athletics, I started bowling over here. It was called Regal Lanes. And started bowling and bowled for several years. And one day, a friend of mine says, "Hey, Glenn, are you gonna enter that bowling tournament in Springville?" I said, "Well, I hadn't heard about it." He says, "Well, yeah, they're gonna have a big bowling tournament over at the Springville Lanes." And I said, well, yeah, I want to bowl in it. He says, well, why don't we go? They hired me. I was managing the bowling alley. So it wasn't commission there. I was getting paid a salary. It wasn't that big, but I was managing it, so I could take off when I wanted. Just assign my workers to do whatever. So I says, okay, let's go. He says, let's go over there and bowl a couple of practice lines and get ready for the tournament because it starts Saturday. And I says, okay. So we drive over and we pull up to the Springville lanes, and oh my gosh, there's people a block and a half. I went clear down the block and around the corner at little dinky Springville lanes. And I thought, oh my gosh, what's happening here? So we park the car, get out. We go in. I stopped one of the people that were getting in line. And I said, what's this line for? And they said, oh, some guys caught a 15-pound German brown trout on the upper Provo River, and they got it frozen in a block of ice. We want to see it. I says, oh, okay. So we went on in, and he says, do you want to see it? And I says, well, I'm not going to wait in that big line to see a trout, a nice trout, 15-pound German brown trout, but I'm not going to wait in line to see it. Let's go bowl. So we went and bowled. When we bowled for a couple hours, when we got through, came out, the line had dwindled down just to a few people. And so we said, well, let's go over and see it. So we walked over, waited for a few minutes, saw the fish, and it really was impressive, all frozen in that block of ice. And it really looked nice. And then we left. We got in the car and left. We're driving home. And my friend says, gee, can you imagine, Glenn, what it would have been if that had been a whale? And I says, yeah, I've been thinking about that. I says, you know what we have to do, don't you? And he says, don't tell me. And I says, yeah, we got to get us a whale. We had no idea how to get a whale, or even if you could get a whale, but we got home and we found out that, yeah, right now you can't. They're a protected species. But back then you could buy a whale, and from a whaling company, you know. And so anyway, we found out we could get a whale in Vancouver, British Columbia. There was a Japanese whaling company there. And we called him, I talked to him, and I says, listen, what would you charge us if we bought a whale from you? He says, well, I could give you a good price, but how are you going to take it out of here? See, he thought I had. I said, he says, you're going to need these whales are, they're a ton a foot. So if you get a 38-ton whale, that's a 38-foot whale, that's 38 tons. He says, really? Why do you say 38 feet? He says, because that's the length of our great big trailers on the road, those. And we've sold a few to people like that. They put them inside those trailers and haul them off. Well, I says, well, that's what I want. I want a 38-foot whale, and we'll be there on such and such a date. He says, okay. I says, where would we stay? And he says, oh, we've got cabins here. All of our employees stay in these cabins. And we got up there, and they were all Japanese guys, and they were raised on whale. They ate whale meat. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But anyway, so now we needed some money, and we had to buy the trailer, the whale, and we had to get a freezing unit on the trailer, because if you went into towns in the summer, it'd just stink and it would rot, and the health department would run you out of town. So we had to have a great big expensive freezing unit on it, which costs a lot of money. Anyway, turns out we needed $30,000. And back then, oh my gosh, that was a lot of money. We needed $30,000 to pull that off. So we had a friend at the bowling establishment. He was an artist. And I told him what we wanted, and he drew us a beautiful picture of the trailer and the truck with the whale inside. You could see the whale inside. And that, we also had to adjust the trailer. We had to take off one whole side, put in glass, not glass, but what do they call that stuff that doesn't break?
Plexiglass?
Plexi, yeah. Put that in because we'd have people come, put up a big tarp, and for them to see it, they had to pay their fee, walk up about 4 stairs onto a platform we built, and they'd walk along inside and they could see the whale. It was really educational. We had a tape going telling all about whales, how the blubber was 6 inches thick, and because of that, they could dive down so many feet in the ocean, and this kind of stuff. Anyway, we thought, how we ever raise $30,000? Well, it was surprising. We went around showing all of our people we knew. A lot of them were business people in the community. And we said, we're selling shares, and you can get 1% for $1,000. In 30 days, we'd raised the 30,000. I mean, people were just buying those shares like crazy. Well, excuse me, we kept 50% and sold 50%. So we sold 50%. So we sold, one share gave them a little more than that. But anyway, we raised the money. We took the trip. We had to get a driver too, not a permanent driver, to drive one of these big rigs. And we took him and we went to Vancouver, British Columbia. Stayed in those cabins for about 2 days till he went out and harpooned our whale. And then the day came where they came to us and says, hey, your whale's on its way in. I said, okay, we went out and looked. You could see the boat coming. To the side of the boat, you could see the waves. They had the whale tied in chains to the, and oh, what a sight that was. When they got there, they brought the whale with a big tow, what do you call this? Tow with an engine. And they hooked it on, and here he come out of the ocean and up. Oh my gosh, big as this house. The inside, it was 10 feet high, 14 feet wide, 40 feet long. And our whale was 38 feet. And we could get it in there, but we couldn't get it in on the end because the flukes, the tail flukes, were so wide. We had to have them trimmed back. We didn't want to. We had to trim them back to where they would fit inside. And and then we had to. I asked the guy that. Then we had to have a company come with a big machine and lift it up, put it in, and I says, now we want it in to where the head is towards it, and we want the mouth open permanently. They're one of the few whales that has ivory teeth, like a elephant's tusks. They're pure ivory. They're great big teeth. They don't most whales don't eat anything. They strain it. But this whale ate. I'm sure that was the kind that swallowed junk. Anyway. But anyway, they put him in there, and it was quite a sight. So anyway, then we took off on the road. I said, goodbye, sweetheart. I'll see you when I see you. Took off on the road. And I have to tell you, I have never made so much money, even to this day in my life. We would go into state fairs. We'd go into big malls. Got to the point where they'd hear about us and they'd call us on the road, want to know if we'd come and put up Willie. We named him Willie. It was written across the side of the trailer, Willie the Whale. And see if we'd come because it would bring all kinds of people to their mall. And then they'd have a slogan on the air, you know, come get a whale of a deal. So, you know, this kind of thing. But anyway, and so it was really, people would come in, we only charged a quarter. Again, people think, a quarter, how could you make so much money? Well, family would come and there would be 3 or 4 of them, their kids, you know, 4, that's $1. And they just come and draw all day long. I mean, the line was like a block long all day long, just hundreds and hundreds of people. The very first day I was in the Nebraska State Fair, we took in $3,700 in coin, mostly coin, in big sacks. We'd take them into the bank. But talk about a lucrative business. But anyway, Willie, we made so much money. My wife and I, we bought a brand new car, cash. Bought our first house, cash. Paid every bill we had. We had no bills. And then about 6 months or 3 or 4 months after that, I told my buddy, I says, I was just in my 20s at that time. I was like 28 or 27, something like that. I says, I'm going home. You know, it's been great, but I don't want to be away from my wife and kids anymore because I'd only see them like twice a year. Because I found if you left, we found it, if you left Willie to other people and hired people to run it, they'd just steal you blind. It was just like we left some guys there one day. We'd taken in over $3,000 the day we left, and we left them to do it. We got back and they said, oh, we're sure sorry. We don't know what happened, but boy, there's hardly been anybody here. And we only took in an average of about $400 a day. We were taking in $3,000 a day. So I went to the owners or the managers of the not the mall, but the I went to him and I says, how's business been? Was there very many people? I said, oh, we had a record weekend. We never had so many. So we learned that you couldn't leave it. You had to stay. If you're going to make it, you had to stay on the road, operate it, and run it, and see that the money was taken care of. So anyway, I told him I'm going home, so I'm going to sell out. You can buy me out, or I'll sell it to some of those in Provo that wanted in. He says, no, if you're going, I'm going. I'll sell out too. So we both came home and sold out. So we got more money there. We sold out for pretty big bucks, and we sold to an attorney that was one of our investors in Willie. And to close this off, 2 years later, Kay and I was up at the Utah State Fair. We went in to see the fair and going around seeing all the displays. Walking along, I look over there and there's this trailer. Of course, they'd taken Willie the Whale off. And, you know, and I says, honey, there's my trailer. She says, well, how do you know? And I says, well, look at all the special support that we had to put in under there. And yeah, that's it. I'm going to go in and see what's in there. And it said on the side, or not the side, they had a big sign that said, come see the giant African rats rats. So I went and walked in, and there he was, the attorney that bought us out. He was in there, and he saw me. He said, "Oh, Hatch! Wow, it's good to see you. It's been a while." And it smelled so bad in it, but their rats were alive, and they were in pens, and they just it smelled so bad. And he came over and he said, "How you doing?" I says, "Great," but I says, "Where's Willie?" He says, "Oh, we had to bury Willie out in the West Desert between Vegas and St. George." He says, "It cost me $1,700 to bury Willie." And I says, "Well, why? How did he die?" He says, "We don't know, but one morning we came out to open up business. We opened the doors, and all there was this great big skeletal carcass, and all of the blubber and skin and meat and everything had just sloughed off the bones. We're all." We said, "Really?" They said the health department told us that because it was so old. See, by then it was getting about 3 years old. It was so old that the content of that meat and stuff, it just went into like a powder. It just sloughed off the bones. And I says, "Why didn't you go get another whale?" He says, "Oh, you can't. We tried, and they're protected species now."
That's crazy.
So anyway,
no, it's interesting because so many people, especially now, I think it's getting actually a lot better, but I think there's been a period of time where people think that they need a career and they need to do something for a long period of time. They can't just do it for 2 years.
No.
But there's a lot of things, a lot of ways you can make money that are just, if you're able to capitalize on the opportunity when it happens, say, "Oh, this is the idea. I'm going to go do it. I need money. Okay, I don't know how I'm going to do this." And that's how, when you read biographies of the people who have been successful in all the industries, they're just flying by the seat of their pants,
right,
hoping things work out day by day, and they're shocked by their success almost, but they just have this idea, this dream, and they go for it, and they don't let anybody tell them they can't or push them out. But were there people in your life, maybe family members or people who are telling you you're crazy and that you shouldn't have done it, and
almost everybody.
You should stay home with your family?
Almost everybody. And then I'd say to them, "Well, let me ask you a question. If there was a great big whale, a real whale, would you pay a quarter to go see it?" And everyone say, "Oh yeah, we'd want to see it," because most people had never seen a whale,
right?
And even the ones that live on the coast and stuff, they'd just seen them way out in the water, diving and stuff. So when we never talked to anybody that didn't want to see a whale. They all wanted to see it. So, but yeah, everybody thought we were crazy, just crazy.
And you probably were, but it didn't matter because
it didn't matter. I knew that if we could get Willie in production, that people would pay to see him. I just felt it. That big long line in Springville just to see a 15-pound trout, that convinced me. That right there convinced me.
Yeah.
Only they didn't make money on a fish, but a whale is, and especially a sperm. It was a sperm whale. That's what they call those kind. It's kind of nasty, but that's just the name of them. There's all kinds of whales, and it's the sperm whale that eats everything and swallows them. And most whales, it tells in the book, I read it, they just strain everything through their teeth or something.
Yeah, it's incredible. So you did that for a few years, and then you were also Thanks for joining us today. If what you heard resonated with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me so I can give you a shout out on the next episode. And thanks to all those who have left a review. It helps spread the message of what it really takes to build a legacy that lasts. Catch you next time on Fueling Your Legacy.